Those votes are still coming through, and President Trump has now taken to social media. He's accusing the Democrats of trying to steal the LA mayoral race and the California gubernatorial race, and he also says an investigation into the election is underway.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. There's something weird going on in California because the primaries took place a few days ago and we still haven't gotten the results. And this is causing a lot of people to be upset, including President Trump, where he made a series of True Social posts, including demanding an investigation into exactly what's going on in California's election. Not only that, we have John Bolton, who is a former security advisor for President Trump, pleading guilty for leaking and mishandling of classified information, and a lot more that we're going to cover throughout this video. Let us get into it, starting with this True Social post by President Trump, where he said, "The Democrats are at it again. They're trying to steal the governor of California primary and the mayor of Los Angeles primary away from the great Republican candidates. Here we go with the very late and massive numbers of mail-in ballots." And the two candidates that he's talking about Republican Steve Hilton, who's leading in that primary for governor, as a gubernatorial candidate, because this is a jungle primary. Basically, the two top candidates, they'll advance to the next round, which would be the general election. And Steve Hilton, the Republican, is leading over Democrat Xavier Becerra and Tom Steyer. And the reason why a lot of people are upset is because the election, it took place a few days ago and only 56% of the votes have been counted. And then we have Spencer Pratt, who's an independent. He's running as an independent, but he's a registered Republican, and he's trailing Mayor Canvass. And we still haven't gotten the final results for this primary as of yet, because only 62% of the votes have been counted, and these numbers can change overnight, which is why a lot of people are upset. And that is the reason why President Trump made this True Social post to demand an investigation into exactly what is going on there. And the president posted, "There's big cheating by the Democrats in California. Votes are all tied up, may not be in for weeks, under investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles. Why the vote counting delay? President Donald J. Trump." As you can see, President Trump is dropping the hammer on the Democrats in California, because it's reasons like these why people don't trust the system, why people don't trust the process. Because you're telling me from the time you cast your vote, it's going to take up to 3 weeks for you to essentially know the results. This just doesn't make sense at all. When there are other states, when there's an election, it takes, a few hours? Which is one of the reasons why Steve Hilton, the Republican that's leading in the gubernatorial primary, he's pretty frustrated, and this is what he had to say. Play clip.
It's just unbelievable. And of course, that's why so many people don't believe the results. But it just undermines confidence. There's no excuse for it, except this is the kind of thing I think you get with 16 years of one-party rule, this corrupt Democrat machine in power for so long. They just lose touch with reality. They don't realize how ridiculous this all seems to normal people.
That was Steve Hilton voicing his frustration as to the ridiculousness of what's going on, because it just doesn't make sense for you to cast your vote and it's going to take a couple weeks for you to know the results. It just doesn't make sense, especially with the amount of mail-in ballots that's coming in, because it's basically what happened to President Trump in 2020. The president had that huge lead, and then over time, as these so-called mail-in ballots came in, then the results started changing out of nowhere, which is why they need to pass the Save America Act, because that will essentially limit mail-in ballots and will have same-day results. And here's Steve Karanaki making that very same point on the night of the elections, pretty much saying that, some of the results are in, but don't be surprised if over time you start seeing the Democrats, they started catching up to Steve Hilton or maybe passing him. Watch this clip.
Or it's just going to have to be such a flood of Democratic ballots coming in after, being tabulated after election night or into the wee hours this morning, that would just lift both Democrats over Hilton. That's increasingly what it needs to be for Steyer.
As I said before, it just doesn't make sense for it to take weeks for the votes to come in, and then what you'll probably see are the Democrats passing Steve Hilton, who's currently in the lead. So I wouldn't be surprised, because there's a whole bunch of shady stuff happening in California. And to show you something else that people are pointing out online is that June 3rd at 10 a.m., there were over 57% of the votes that were in. Over almost 58% of the votes were counted. And then June 4th at 1 a.m., somehow it went from 58%, right? 15 hours later, went from 58% to 56%, which just doesn't make sense at all. The numbers went up, right? Because it was at 3.6 million and it went up to almost 4 million or just over 4 million votes counted. But basically what this signifies is that ballots are being popped up out of nowhere, which doesn't make sense at all. And this is why we need same-day voting and same-day counting as well. And here we have Kevin McCarthy calling out California and making it abundantly clear that this is possible, because this is something that Florida does, where they vote the same day and you can get the results the same day as well. Watch this clip.
And how does Florida count all their ballots in a couple hours? And we take weeks. In California, it didn't used to be this way. We could know who won it in a day or two. And the governor went in and made sure everybody just gets mailed a ballot, and people move a lot. So you can live in a house and there'd be 3 other families that lived there in the last 10 years. They don't clean up the rolls, so you get a lot of ballots.
Yeah.
That was Kevin McCarthy calling out California for all the shadiness that's going on over there. And the next clip that I want to show you is of Nithya Raman. Before we get to John Bolton pleading guilty, we have Nithya Raman, one of the mayoral candidate. She's in last place between the last 3, between Karen Bass, Spencer Pratt, and herself. And we have a video of her having a complete meltdown, crying on camera because she's in the last place. Even though it may change overnight, because there's a whole bunch of shady stuff going on in California. But let's watch this clip of her having a complete meltdown. Play clip.
Karna and Kaveri, I hope you know that everything every person in this room is fighting for in this campaign has been about building a city that's worthy of you and every child in this city.
Save the tears. Half the city didn't even
I think she should save those tears, because I don't know why she's sitting up there crying, having a complete meltdown. But let us move to this whole John Bolton situation, because if you don't know who this guy is, John Bolton, he served as President Trump National Security Advisor during Trump 1.0. Then I think he left the administration, and that is when he tried to write a book with a whole bunch of classified information. And when President Trump left office, this guy, John Bolton, became the biggest anti-Trumper. And then when President Trump came back to office in Trump 2.0, what he did, he vowed to hold this guy accountable, because this guy was leaking classified information all over the place. And then recently, this guy, John Bolton, he decided to plead guilty.
Moments ago, breaking news, sources revealing that John Bolton is planning to plead guilty to retaining classified information. That plea will likely keep him out of prison. This stems from a charge, 18 of them at the end of last year, of keeping a diary-like material of classified information. So it looks like that case is moving forward and all likelihood is now settled.
So John Bolton, the former national security advisor to President Trump, decided to plead guilty because what he was allegedly doing, leaking classified information or having classified information, where he used that to write a book and showing information to family members and friends who didn't have the necessary clearance to see that. Plus, he was out of office. And this is President Trump cleaning up the swamp, because that's what you have a lot of people do. They go to Washington, D.C., and then what they try to do, they get insider information to make themselves rich, or use that insider information to write books and then make millions of dollars. And this was John Bolton on President Trump's indictment after President Joe Biden politically targeted President Donald Trump. And this was John Bolton praising the Justice Department at that time. Watch this clip.
Read the indictment, which I don't think many people have done. It's really a masterful piece of work, in my view. It is devastating, and it really should be the end of Trump's political career, let alone the beginning of his jail time. Ultimately, I think people will see this behavior by Trump was a serious threat to national security. You know, Republicans used to believe that not prosecuting criminals led to more crime. The answer here is take the politics out of the decision, and in this case, proceed with the prosecution and do the same for anybody else who does anything even remotely like it. Just read the indictment and ask yourself, if the government can prove what they allege here, shouldn't this man go to jail? The simple fact he had the documents, for any reason or no reason, should subject him to prosecution.
That was John Bolton making the argument that if President Trump had classified information, that he should have gone to jail. And John Bolton recently, I guess he's pleading guilty to having classified information or leaking classified information. So the question is, should he go to jail? Because that's what he was advocating for President Trump. So the question is, should John Bolton go to jail? And that brings us to the end of this video. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below. I appreciate you watching all the way to the end. Also, please consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.